My in-laws. The very people who once told me I wasn't good enough to marry their son, just asked me to approve their $1 million loan application. And I am the only one in the bank who can do it. My name is Alex, and for the past 5 years, I have worked my way up the ranks at one of the biggest banks in the city. I am now a senior loan officer, which means big business loans, the kind that make or break companies. It means I am trusted with a lot of money and a lot of power. And right now, that power feels like a ticking time bomb in my hands. It started like any other Monday. I was sipping my coffee, going through emails, mentally preparing for the stack of applications on my desk. Then my phone rang. It was Mark, my husband. His voice was tight, a little strained, like he was holding something back. "Hey, Alex," he said. "Listen. I need to talk to you about something important. Can you meet me for lunch?" That was unusual. Mark usually just texted or called quick. This serious tone set off little alarms in my head. Had something happened to his parents? They were always a source of drama, but usually a contained kind of drama, not a phone call drama. I agreed to meet him at our usual spot, a quiet little deli near my office. When I got there, he was already sitting down, hunched over his sandwich, barely touching it. He looked pale. My stomach twisted. "What's going on, Mark?" I asked, sliding into the booth across from him. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Took a deep breath, like he was about to dive into cold water. "It's my parents," he began. "Their business, the construction company, it's really struggling. More than struggling, actually. They're on the brink of going under." I blinked. His parents' company was their life. They had built it from the ground up, or so they always said. It was their pride and joy. I knew things had been slow in the construction industry, but I had no idea it was this bad. "Oh, Mark, I am so sorry to hear that," I said, genuinely. Despite our history, I never wished true hardship on anyone, even them. "What happened? Can they turn it around?" He shook his head slowly. "They've exhausted all their other options. Maxed out credit, tried to get smaller loans. Nothing worked. They're desperate, and they just applied for a huge loan, a last-ditch effort." My heart sank a little, sensing where this was going. "And who did they apply with?" I asked, though I already had a sinking feeling in my gut. He looked me straight in the eye, and that's when he dropped the bombshell. "Your bank, Alex. They applied for a commercial loan with your bank. And you know how the system works. It landed on your desk. The air left my lungs. My coffee cup felt suddenly heavy in my hand. It was like a scene from a bad movie, but it was real. Their application. On my desk. I was the person who would review it, analyze it, and ultimately make the recommendation that would decide if they got the money or if their company, their life's work, crumbled to dust. "My desk," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Are you serious, Mark? There are dozens of loan officers at my bank." He nodded, a grim expression on his face. "Yes, it's the way the district lines are drawn and the size of the loan they asked for. You are the senior officer handling that region and that amount. They asked for $1 million, Alex. $1 million. $1 million. That was a serious amount of money. Enough to rebuild a failing business, or enough to sink it even deeper if the plan wasn't sound. And it was all on me." My mind immediately flashed back to every single time his parents, especially his mother, had looked at me with thinly veiled disdain. Comments about my modest upbringing, my career choices, my clothes, even my hair. The way they had subtly, or not so subtly, suggested to Mark that he could do better, that he deserved someone with a more established family, someone who understood their world. "She's not good enough for you, Mark," his mother had said to him once, loud enough for me to hear from the kitchen. She just doesn't fit in with our family. She doesn't understand our values. And his father, always quieter, but with an equally sharp sting, had added, she's got a good head on her shoulders, for a working girl, I suppose. But this isn't the life she was raised for. Those words had cut deep, burrowing into my heart and staying there for years. I had tried to let them go for Mark's sake, for the sake of peace. They lingered, a constant, dull ache, beneath the surface of our otherwise happy marriage. And now, here they were, needing me, the working girl who wasn't good enough. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. A bitter taste filled my mouth. Please, you have to help them. This is everything to them. If they lose the company, they lose everything. I looked at him, my husband, the man I loved, who was caught between his wife and his struggling parents. His face was etched with worry, a desperate hope in his eyes. And I knew, in that moment, that this wasn't just about them. This was about my marriage, about the future of our family. But it was also about me, about my pride, my history, the years of feeling like I was constantly on trial, constantly being judged by them. And now the judge and jury was me. The power was mine. $1 million. Their future. My call. The thought sent a shiver down my spine, a mix of fear and a dark, dangerous thrill. What would I do? Could I put aside all the years of hurt, the insults, the feeling of never being accepted, and just do my job? Or would the ghost of those painful memories influence my decision? Perhaps even push me towards a path of retribution. The weight of that choice settled on my shoulders like a heavy cloak, cold and suffocating. My lunch sat untouched. The sandwich suddenly tasted like ash. This was going to be the hardest decision of my life, a truly heartbreaking one, no matter which way I chose. The memory of Mark's mother, Evelyn, looking down her nose at my sensible dress, still makes my blood boil a little, even all these years later. It was during our first Christmas together at their sprawling, fancy house. Mark and I had been dating for about 6 months. He was everything I wasn't used to. Charming, a little flashy, but genuinely kind and funny. I was from a small town, raised by a single mom, always working hard for everything. His family was old money, or at least, old money that presented itself as having built everything from scratch, which was a kind of old money I hadn't encountered before. I remember that first meeting. It was a formal dinner. I had spent hours picking out an outfit that felt appropriate, not too flashy, not too casual. I thought I looked good, the moment Evelyn's eyes swept over me. From my heels to my carefully styled hair, I felt like a teenager in my mom's oversized clothes. "So Alex," she had said, her voice dripping with a sweetness that felt more like poison. "Mark tells us you work in banking. How quaint." Quaint, that word had stuck with me. Like my job, a legitimate career I had worked hard for, was some kind of hobby, like knitting or collecting stamps. Mark had tried to jump in. "Mom, Alex is a fantastic analyst. She's got a real knack for number." But Evelyn had just waved him off, a dismissive flick of her wrist. "Yes, darling, I am sure she's very competent. But we had always hoped you'd settle down with someone who understood the nuances of the business world. Someone who could truly be a partner in our endeavors." Her gaze had landed squarely on my hands, as if searching for something, a diamond perhaps, or a subtle sign of wealth. It felt like an inspection, not an introduction. His father, Robert, had just cleared his throat and offered a tight-lipped smile, a silent agreement with his wife's assessment. The insults, both subtle and direct, had continued throughout the years. At family gatherings, over holiday dinners, even on casual phone calls. Once when Mark and I had just bought our first apartment, a small but lovely place that we were incredibly proud of, Evelyn had visited. She walked through it, her expression blank, and then said, "It's cozy. I suppose it's fine for now, but Mark, darling, don't you think you deserve something with a little more presence? A house with a garden, perhaps. A place where children can truly run free." My face had burned. We were just starting out, building our lives. Her words made it sound like we were living in squalor. Another time, when I had gotten a promotion to a more senior role, one that involved a lot of responsibility and long hours, his father had chuckled. "Well, that's admirable, Alex. A woman working so hard. But don't you worry that all this ambition will distract you from what truly matters. A family, children, those are the real investments." It wasn't advice, it was a judgment. It was a clear message that my career was secondary, almost a flaw. Something to be tolerated until I fulfilled my true purpose. Even leading up to our wedding, there had been snide remarks. Evelyn had openly questioned my choice of dress, my guest list, even the caterer. "Are you sure this is what Mark truly wants, dear? He has such refined tastes." It was always about Mark, as if I was somehow trapping him or not meeting his supposed high standards. And Mark. He had tried, bless his heart, he really had. In the early days, he would often defend me. "Mom, please, you are being unfair. Alex is amazing." Or, "Dad, her career is important to her, and I support that." But over time, as the years passed and the comments never stopped, his defenses became weaker, more muted. He would just sigh or change the subject. Sometimes he'd just pat my hand and say, "Don't listen to them, Alex. You know how they are." It wasn't enough. It never felt like enough. The sting still landed. The message still resonated. I wasn't good enough. I never would be. I remember one particularly painful Christmas, a few years after we were married. I had tried so hard to find the perfect gift for Evelyn, something thoughtful and expensive that showed I valued her. Despite everything, she opened it, a beautiful cashmere scarf, and held it up with a faint smile. "Oh, how lovely, Alex. Such a practical choice. Though I do prefer silk for my finer garments." It was a backhanded compliment, a thinly veiled insult disguised as polite acceptance. Oku was sitting next to me, just squeezed my hand under the table, his eyes full of sympathy, but he said nothing. I wanted to scream. These memories, these moments of quiet humiliation and open disapproval, they were like stones in my pocket, weighing me down. I had worked tirelessly to build my career, to prove to myself, and perhaps unconsciously to them, that I was capable, intelligent, and yes, good enough. My promotion to senior loan officer felt like a triumph, a quiet victory. I had earned my place, not through inherited wealth or family connections, but through sheer hard work and dedication. And now their future, their very livelihood, depended on that hard-earned position. On me, the working girl who wasn't good enough. Sitting at my desk, the loan application file for Robert and Evelyn Sterling Holdings Inc. felt like a living thing, pulsing with all that history. Their names, their address, the details of their failing business were all there, stark and unavoidable. This wasn't just a financial document, it was a chronicle of their lives, and now a mirror reflecting mine. I picked up the file, my fingers tracing the bold letters of their company name. The irony was so bitter, it almost made me laugh out loud. All those years they had made me feel small, insignificant, like an outsider peering into their world of privilege. And now, they were the ones on the outside looking in, desperately hoping I would open the door for them. The weight of the decision pressed down heavy and suffocating. It wasn't just a loan application, it was a test. test of my character, my professionalism, and my ability to navigate the treacherous waters of family, forgiveness, and power. Could I truly be objective? Could I set aside the deep-seated resentment and just do my job? Or would the ghosts of Christmas past and all the years of feeling inadequate blind me to what was right? I honestly didn't know. The answer felt like it was still swirling somewhere in the unresolved pain of my own past. The very next day, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number, but my gut told me exactly who it was. I hesitated, looking at the glowing screen. Could I really face them? Not just on paper, but directly. I took a deep breath and answered. "Hello, Alex dear, it's Evelyn Sterling." Her voice was syrupy sweet, sickly so. It was the voice she used when she wanted something, or when she was trying to sound charming, but failing spectacularly. "I hope I am not disturbing you at work." "No, Mrs. Sterling, it's fine," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral, professional. I didn't want to give her any hint of the turmoil churning inside me. "Oh, please, Alex, call me Evelyn. We're family after all," she cooed. The word family felt like a lie, a cruel joke. "Mark told us you are the lovely person handling our loan application. What a coincidence, isn't it?" Coincidence. She made it sound like fate, not just a system assigning files. "Yes, Evelyn. The application is on my desk. I am starting to review it." "Excellent. Excellent," she purred. "We just wanted to reach out, to ensure everything is clear. Robert and I have worked so hard on this business. Our entire lives are invested in it. It's been a bit of a rough patch, as I am sure Mark mentioned, but we have such a solid plan for recovery. This loan is truly essential." She went on, describing their business as if it were a phoenix about to rise from the ashes, painting a rosy picture that I already knew was likely far from the truth, based on what Mark had implied. She talked about their loyalty to the bank, how they had been customers for decades. She even threw in a casual mention of how much Mark loved me, how happy he was, trying to butter me up, subtly reminding me of my connection to their son. It was a classic manipulation tactic, and it made my skin crawl. "We just know, with your keen eye for detail and your understanding of the market, you'll see the immense potential," she finished, her voice a little too confident. "I will conduct a thorough review, Evelyn," I stated firmly, cutting through her performative sweetness. "Just as I do with every application. It's a standard process." There was a slight pause on her end. The sweetness faded, just a tiny bit. "Of course, dear. We simply wanted to make sure you understood the urgency, the family connection." "I understand the urgency of every loan application, Evelyn. And I assure you, I treat all clients with the same level of professional due diligence." My words were measured, deliberate. I wanted her to understand that this wasn't a casual favor I was considering. This was a business transaction, and I was all business. After a few more pleasantries that felt like a verbal tug of war, she finally hung up. I put my phone down, my hand trembling slightly. That call had confirmed it. They weren't just relying on my professional role. They were leaning on the family card, hoping my connection to Mark would sway me. It was insulting and infuriating. Later that evening, Mark came home, looking even more stressed than he had at lunch. He knew about the call. His parents had probably told him they had spoken to me, and he wanted to know how it went. "So Mom called you?" he said, walking into the kitchen where I was making dinner. His shoulders were slumped. "Yes, she did," I replied, stirring the pasta sauce a little too vigorously. "And? What did you think? Did she give you all the information you need?" He sounded hopeful, almost childlike. I turned to face Mark. She wasn't giving me information, she was trying to influence me. She was trying to remind me that they're your parents, that we're family, as if that should override my professional duty. His face fell. Alex, come on. They're just worried. They're desperate. You can't blame them for trying everything. I can blame them for trying to manipulate me. I shot back, my voice rising slightly. They've treated me like dirt for years, made me feel like I wasn't good enough. And now suddenly, because they need something, I am family. And dear Alex, it's insulting, Mark. He walked over, putting his hands on my shoulders. I know, I get it. Their behavior has been awful. I've told them that so many times. But this is bigger than that, honey. This is their entire life. Their house is tied to this business. If they lose the company, they lose everything. They could be homeless, Alex. The image of Evelyn and Robert, polished and poised, suddenly facing homelessness, was jarring. It was a powerful appeal, one that hit me hard. This wasn't just about a company going bankrupt. It was about two people, albeit two deeply flawed people, losing everything they had ever built. I have to do my job, Mark, I said, my voice softer now, the anger replaced by a crushing weight of responsibility. I can't just approve alone because they are parents. That's unethical. It could cost me my job, or worse, put the bank at serious risk if their plan isn't sound. I know, he sighed, pulling me into a hug. I am not asking you to do anything unethical. Just really look at it. Please, give them a fair shot. A fair shot. What did a fair shot mean when the scales of history were so heavily tipped? I wrapped my arms around him, burying my face in his shoulder. He was right. I couldn't let my personal feelings completely blind me, but I also couldn't ignore the deep festering wounds their words had left. The next morning, I opened the loan application file on my computer. Sterling, Robert and Evelyn Holdings Inc. The numbers were daunting. $1 million. The projected cash flows seemed overly optimistic. Collateral they were offering, primarily their personal property and the company's existing assets, seemed shaky. This wasn't going to be easy. This wasn't a simple yes or no based on basic criteria. This was going to require digging, a lot of digging. And I knew, deep down, that every number, every line item, was going to be scrutinized not just by my professional eye, but by the watchful, resentful ghosts of my past. The investigation was about to begin, and I had a feeling it was going to uncover more than just financial details. The next few days were a blur of numbers, spreadsheets, and financial jargon. I locked myself in my office, closing the door, trying to block out the world and focus solely on the Sterling application. This was my job, after all, and I prided myself on my thoroughness. But with every page I turned, every financial statement I analyzed, the line between professional duty and personal resentment blurred a little more. Their application was comprehensive, thick with financial projections, business plans, and asset lists. On the surface, it looked plausible. Robert and Evelyn had always been good at presenting a polished image, but my job was to look beneath the polish. The first thing I noticed was their overly optimistic revenue projections for the next 3 to 5 years. They claimed they could ramp up business by 50% in the first year alone, a figure that seemed wildly unrealistic given the current market downturn and their company's dwindling client list. They were relying heavily on a few large potential contracts that hadn't even been secured yet. This was a major red flag. Banks typically look for proven revenue streams, not speculative ones. Then there was the collateral. They were offering their personal home, valued at around $800,000, and the company's existing equipment. The equipment, however, was older, much of it paid off, but also in need of significant upgrades or replacement. Actual market value was probably far less than they claimed. The house was a decent asset, but it also carried a prior mortgage. If the loan went south, seizing their home would be a messy, difficult, and emotionally charged process, especially with Mark involved. I pulled their credit history. Robert's was fair. Evelyn's was good. But the company's credit report showed a recent dip, a few late payments to suppliers, and a significant amount of outstanding debt that wasn't clearly accounted for in their application's initial summaries. It felt like they were trying to hide something, or at least downplay their true financial woes. Their business plan focused heavily on diversification into new areas, like green energy construction, which sounded appealing but required a huge learning curve and significant new capital investment beyond the loan they were asking for. It seemed like a desperate attempt to pivot, rather than a well-thought-out strategy. They lacked concrete experience in these new areas, and their current staff didn't have the necessary training. The more I dug, the more concerned I became. This wasn't just a struggling business. It was a business that appeared to be on life support, with a plan that felt more like wishful thinking than a solid strategy. Approving this loan would be a massive risk for the bank. It went against many of our standard underwriting guidelines. Mid-afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was Mark. "Hey, how's it going with the application?" he asked, trying to sound casual, but I could hear the anxiety in his voice. "It's a lot to go through, Mark," I said honestly. "Their projections are very aggressive, and there are some discrepancies with their outstanding debts." He sighed. "Oh, are you sure?" "They said everything was in order. They've always been so meticulous with their finances. Meticulous or good at presenting a facade." I found myself asking, the words slipping out before I could stop them. I immediately regretted it. That was the personal Alex talking, not the professional Alex. "Alex, please," he said, his voice pleading. "Try to keep an open mind. They've invested their lives in this. They truly believe they can turn it around." "I am keeping an open mind, Mark," I insisted, perhaps too sharply. "But my job is to protect the bank's assets. And right now, their application has a lot of red flags. Just don't make any snap judgments, okay?" He pressed. "Give them the benefit of the doubt." For us, the call ended, leaving me feeling even more conflicted. I loved Mark, and I wanted to support him. But I also had a responsibility to my employer, and to my own professional integrity. If I approved a loan that was clearly too risky and it went bad, it could hurt my career too. I could face disciplinary action, even lose my job. Was it worth that risk for people who had treated me so poorly? I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. I thought about the times Evelyn had subtly scoffed at my working girl status, implying that people like me didn't understand real business. Well, I understood enough to see a bad deal when it was staring me in the face. Their entire business model seemed precarious, built on assumptions and a prayer. I remembered a conversation with my mentor, Sarah, early in my career. "Alex," she had said, "the numbers never lie. They tell a story. Your job is to read that story, even if it's unpleasant." The story these numbers were telling was one of desperation and poor management. It was a story of a company that had overextended itself, failed to adapt, and was now clinging to a lifeline they wanted me to throw to them. I knew what I had to do next. I couldn't just deny them based on my initial review. I needed more information. I needed to schedule an in-person meeting with Robert and Evelyn, to go through these discrepancies, to ask the tough question. It was standard procedure for a loan of this size and complexity. But I knew it would be anything but standard. It would be a confrontation disguised as a business meeting. and I had a feeling it would be a very uncomfortable one. Professional me was preparing questions, but the personal me was steeling herself for another round of their subtle, demeaning remarks. I just hoped I could keep my two selves separate, enough to do my job without letting my emotions get the better of me. The stakes were high for everyone involved. That night, after dinner, I finally sat Mark down. The tension between us had been thick since our phone call earlier. I knew we needed to talk, really talk about what was happening. This wasn't just about his parents' loan. It was about our relationship and the years of unspoken resentment I carried because of them. Mark, I began, choosing my words carefully. We need to address this. Your parents' loan isn't just a professional matter for me. It's bringing up a lot of old feelings, and it's putting a strain on us. He nodded, running a hand through his hair. He looked tired, caught in the middle of a war he hadn't started. I know, Alex, and I am sorry. I really am. I wish none of this was happening. Me too, I said. But it is. And I need you to understand something. For years, your parents have treated me like I wasn't good enough. They questioned my upbringing, my career, my choices. They made me feel like an outsider, like I was never going to truly be part of your family. Do you remember what your mom said when we first got engaged? He winced. She said a lot of things. She asked you right in front of me if you were settling. She said I didn't have the right background for you. Do you remember that, Mark? My voice was quiet but firm, the pain still fresh after all this time. He looked away, his jaw tightening. I remember, Alex, and I told her she was wrong. I stood up for you. You did sometimes, I conceded. But it didn't stop them, did it? The comments kept coming. The subtle digs, the thinly veiled insults. Every Christmas, every family dinner, I felt like I was being judged, measured, and always found lacking. And you started to just let it go. You'd sigh. You'd pat my hand. You'd say, that's just how they are. But it wasn't just how they are for me, Mark. It was how they made me feel. It was how they made me question myself, question if I really was good enough for you, for this life. He finally looked back at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and sadness. Alex, I am so sorry. You are right. I should have done more. I should have shut them down harder every single time. I was trying to keep the peace, trying to not make things worse. But I see now that it made things worse for you. I hated hearing them say those things. Believe me, it tore me apart. But they're my parents. And I guess I just hoped they would eventually come around. See how wonderful you are. See how happy you make me. And did they? I asked, my voice cracking slightly. Did they ever truly come around? Or are they only being nice now, because they need something from me? From the working girl who's suddenly holding their entire future in her hands. He looked down at his hands, twisting his wedding ring. I don't know, Alex. Maybe not. Maybe they just can't see past their own expectations. But still, they're my parents, and they're in trouble. Big trouble. They could lose everything. I know, it's asking a lot, but I am asking you to put aside the past for this, just for this one thing. Not for them, but for me. And for us, for our peace of mind. His plea hit me hard. It wasn't about them anymore. It was about him, and about our marriage. If I denied the loan, even if it was the right professional decision, how would it affect us? Would he resent me even if he understood? Would our marriage be able to weather the storm of his parents' potential ruin, especially if I was the one who pulled the plug? Mark, I said, reaching across to take his hand. I am looking at their application. And honestly, it's not looking good. Their financials are messy. Their projections are unrealistic, and there are some serious red flags. If I approve this loan as is, I would be putting the bank at a huge risk. It could even jeopardize my job if it went south. My professional integrity is on the line here too. He squeezed my hand. I understand that. I really do. But is there anything at all that could make it work? Can you give them some advice? Can you tell them what they need to fix? I have to schedule a meeting with them anyway, to go through these issues, I admit. It's standard procedure for a loan of this size. But I need you to be clear with them, Mark. This isn't a formality. I am not doing them a favor because of family. I am doing my job. And if their business isn't viable, if they don't have a solid plan, I can't approve it, no matter who they are. He looked at me, a flicker of something in his eyes I couldn't quite decipher. Hope, fear, resignation. I'll talk to them, he promised. I'll tell them to be completely honest with you, to answer all your questions, and to not try any of their usual tactics. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the situation hanging heavy in the air. Conversation had cleared some of the air between us, but it hadn't solved the core problem. The decision was still mine, and it was still going to be excruciating. I knew that whatever I decided, someone was going to be hurt deeply. Conversation with Mark had been difficult but necessary. It solidified the fact that this decision wasn't just about my past pain or their present desperation. It was about my future with Mark and the kind of person I wanted to be, both professionally and personally. The meeting with Robert and Evelyn was now set for the end of the week, and I knew I had to go into it with my head clear and my emotions in check. No matter how much their past actions still gnawed at me, I needed to talk to someone completely outside of this mess. Mark was too close, too emotionally invested. My colleagues at the bank would offer professional advice, but they wouldn't understand the personal turmoil. That's when I thought of Sarah. Sarah was my mentor, the woman who had guided me through my early days at the bank, teaching me the ropes, not just of finance but of navigating corporate politics and maintaining integrity. She retired a few years ago, but we still met for coffee every couple of months. She was smart, insightful, and brutally honest. I called her and asked if she had time for an urgent coffee. She could hear the stress in my voice and agreed to meet me that afternoon. When we sat down at our usual quiet corner cafe, I laid it all out for her. The in-laws' history of treating me poorly, the not good enough comments, the sudden loan application landing on my desk, and the desperate state of their business. I told her about Mark's plea and the internal struggle I was facing. Sarah listened patiently, sipping her tea, her expression calm and thoughtful. When I finished, the silence stretched between us. "So," she said finally, her voice soft but direct, "you have the power to ruin them or to save them. And you are wondering if you should let your personal feelings dictate a professional decision." "Exactly," I said, feeling a knot loosen in my chest just by vocalizing it. "Am I being petty? Is it wrong to let what they did to me influence my work? But at the same time, how do I just forget years of feeling put down, especially when they're suddenly acting like my best friends because they need something?" Sarah put her cup down. "Alex, it's human to feel that way. You're not a robot. And their past behavior was despicable. They made you feel small, and that kind of hurt sticks with you. So, no, you are not being petty for feeling what you feel. But professionally," I started. "Professionally," Sarah interrupted gently, "your job is to evaluate that loan application based on its merits. Is it a viable business? Is the risk acceptable for the bank? Are they trustworthy borrowers? Your personal feelings about Robert and Evelyn, while valid, should not be the sole determinant of your decision. But here is the thing, Alex. Your personal feelings can sometimes give you a sharper eye. If you are predisposed to distrust their projections because you know their character, that's not necessarily a bad thing, as long as it leads you to dig deeper, to ask tougher questions, rather than just saying no out of spite. I leaned forward. So, you were saying it's okay to be more skeptical because it's them. I am saying it's okay to be thorough, Sarah corrected. And your history with them might make you more thorough than you would be with a stranger. That's a strength, not a weakness, as long as you can separate fact from emotion. Are their numbers sound? Is their plan realistic? If they are, and you deny them purely out of revenge, then yes, that's unethical and potentially damaging to your career. But if their numbers are not sound, if their plan is a house of cards, and you deny them, that's just good business. The fact that it aligns with a personal satisfaction is just a byproduct. What about Mark? I asked, my voice quieter now. He's asking me to do this for him, for our marriage. He's caught in the middle. Sarah sighed. That's the hardest part, isn't it? Love makes us do complicated things. You have to decide what kind of foundation you want your marriage to be built on. A foundation of honesty and professional integrity, even if it causes pain in the short term. Or a foundation of resentment and potential professional compromise that could fester over time. Mark needs to understand that you have a job to do. And if his parents' business is truly beyond saving, no amount of loan will fix it. It will only prolong the inevitable and potentially drag you down with it. She looked at me intently. This isn't just about their money, Alex. It's about your boundaries. It's about your self-worth. They spent years telling you you weren't enough. Now you have a chance to show them, and yourself, that you are more than enough. You are competent. You are professional. You are ethical. And you won't be swayed by manipulation or veiled threats. Her words resonated deeply. It wasn't about revenge, not truly. It was about standing firm in my own value, about holding my ground in the face of people who had tried to diminish me. If their loan was genuinely viable, I would have to approve it and somehow find a way to make peace with that. But if it wasn't, if it was as shaky as my initial review suggested, then my duty was clear. What if they beg? I asked, picturing Evelyn crying, Robert pleading. Sarah smiled faintly. They'll probably try everything. But remember, Alex, you are not their bank. You are a representative of the bank. Your decision has to be based on facts, not emotions. And you've worked too hard to let anyone compromise your integrity, especially people who never believed in you. I left the cafe feeling a little lighter, a little clearer. Sarah hadn't given me an easy answer, but she had given me permission to feel my feelings, while still demanding professional excellence from myself. The upcoming meeting with Robert and Evelyn Sterling would be tough. I was ready to face them, not as the not good enough girlfriend from years ago, but as Alex, the senior loan officer, fully prepared to do her job no matter how much the personal history intertwined with the professional present. I knew that the numbers were going to speak volumes, and I had to be ready to listen and to act on what they said, even if it shattered their world and created ripples in mine. The meeting was set for Tuesday morning. Robert and Evelyn arrived promptly, looking impeccably dressed as always. Evelyn was in a sharp navy suit, Robert in a crisp shirt and tie. They looked like they were ready to close a multi-million-dollar deal, not plead for their financial survival. Mark had not joined them, which I appreciate. This needed to be a purely professional interaction, at least on the surface. I greeted them politely, escorted them into a small conference room. The atmosphere was stiff, formal. I had my laptop open, displaying their application details, and a notebook filled with the specific questions I needed to ask. Thank you for coming in, I began, my voice calm and even. As you know, for a loan of this size, we need to go through everything in detail. I have a few questions based on my initial review of your application. Evelyn smiled, a little too brightly. Of course, Alex dear. We're an open book. We just want to get this sorted so we can focus on rebuilding our wonderful company. I took a deep breath. Let's start with your revenue projections. You forecasted a 50% increase in the first year, largely based on potential new green energy contracts. Can you show me the specifics of these contracts? Are they signed? Are there letters of intent? Robert cleared his throat. Well, they're not signed yet per SE, but we have very strong indications. Verbal commitments, you understand. Relationships are key in this business, Alex. Verbal commitments aren't sufficient for a loan of this magnitude, I stated, my eyes fixed on them. We need tangible evidence of future revenue. Evelyn interjected, but we've always secured our contracts this way. Our word is our bond. Everyone in the industry knows Sterling Construction's reputation. I understand, I said, not backing down, but the bank requires more. Now, let's talk about your outstanding debts. Your application states you have X amount in outstanding liabilities. However, our credit checks indicate a significantly higher figure, including several large unsecured personal loans and some business debts that appear to be overdue. Robert shifted in his seat. Oh, those are just some minor things. Temporary cash flow issues, you understand. They'll be paid off when this loan comes through. Minor things don't amount to hundreds of thousands of dollars in discrepancies. I counted, looking directly at Robert. And that's a problem. We need a clear and accurate picture of your financial state, not an optimistic one. Evelyn laughed, a brittle sound. Alex, you are so thorough, just like a true banker. But sometimes you have to look at the bigger picture, the potential. My job is to look at the facts, Evelyn, I said, letting a hint of firmness enter my voice. And the facts are not aligning with what you've submitted. Now, let's talk about the company's financial statements for the past 3 years. Here is a significant amount listed under miscellaneous expenses that doesn't seem to correspond to typical operating costs. Can you explain these? This was where it got really interesting. The miscellaneous expenses were abnormally high for a construction company, year after year. I had initially flagged them as potential waste or poor accounting. But as I dug deeper, a pattern started to emerge. Robert stammered. Oh, those are just various operational costs. Things that don't fit neatly into other categories. Consulting fees, minor repairs, unexpected expenditures. Unexpected expenditures that happen every single year, in almost identical large amounts. I pressed. That doesn't sound right. I pulled up a specific spreadsheet I had prepared, highlighting the suspicious figures. For example, in 2021, you spent over $150,000 on miscellaneous expenses. In 2022, it was $160,000. These are not small sums. What exactly are these for? Evelyn's composure finally cracked. She looked at Robert, then back at me, her eyes darting nervously. Alex, dear, some business matters are sensitive, private. Sensitive and private expenses that aren't properly documented are a huge problem for a loan application. I stated, my voice unwavering. They suggest a lack of transparency, or worse, something being actively hidden. Suddenly, I noticed Robert's face turn ashen. He was trying to catch Evelyn's eye, a desperate, silent plea for her to stop talking. But it was too late. Evelyn, perhaps thinking she could charm her way out of it, decided to try a different tack. Look, Alex, she said, leaning forward, her voice dropping conspiratorially. This is very difficult for us to discuss, but those expenses, they were for Mark's sister. his older sister Beatrice. You know, the one who lives out of state. She had some legal troubles, rather unfortunate. We had to help her out. Keep it quiet. It's not something we like to talk about. My jaw almost dropped. Mark had an older sister, Beatrice. He had never mentioned her, not once. In all our years together, all the family stories, the sterling family tree he had described, there had never been a Beatrice. This was a complete shock. And legal troubles that cost $150,000 a year for 2 years, hidden as miscellaneous expenses. This wasn't just poor accounting. This was actively deceptive. Mark has an older sister? I asked, my voice flat, betraying no emotion. Professional me was reeling, but the personal me was absolutely floored. Why had Mark never told me? Evelyn, realizing her mistake, stammered, "Oh well, yes, she's a sensitive topic. Mark doesn't like to talk about it. We thought it best to keep it quiet. Family matters, you know. But it's all in the past now. We just needed to keep her afloat. She's Mark's flesh and blood after all." Robert buried his face in his hands. This was far beyond what I had expected. This wasn't just about bad business practices or financial mismanagement. This was about a hidden family secret, significant amounts of money funneled out of the company, and a deliberate attempt to mislead the bank. And my husband, the man I shared everything with, had kept it from me. My mind raced. If they had been siphoning off company funds for years for a secret family member with legal troubles, what else were they hiding? And how much of this did Mark know? The fact that he had never mentioned a sister was a massive breach of trust. This wasn't just a loan approval anymore. It was about uncovering a deeply rooted secret that had implications not just for their business, but for my marriage. The professional duty now intertwined with a profound personal betrayal. This discovery fundamentally changed everything. The meeting with the Sterlings continued for another hour, but my mind was reeling. I managed to maintain my composure, pushing for more details on their business plan, their assets, their liabilities. They continued to be vague, optimistic, and at times openly dismissive of my concerns. But the biggest revelation had already been made. Beatrice, the secret sister, and the massive undisclosed transfers of company money. As soon as they left, I closed my office door and stared at my computer screen. The miscellaneous expenses spreadsheet glowing mockingly back at me. This wasn't just bad business, it was potentially fraudulent. Misrepresenting financials to this degree was a serious red flag. Proving this loan would not only be professionally irresponsible, it could even implicate me if this came to light later. More importantly, though, was the shock and hurt of Mark's secret sister. How could he keep something like that from me for so many years? Part of his family, a significant financial drain on his parents' company, and I knew nothing about it. It felt like a deliberate choice to keep me in the dark, to protect his family's image rather than trust me fully. I needed to confront Mark, but first I had to process this professionally. I called my manager, David, and asked for a brief, urgent meeting. I laid out the financial discrepancies I had found, the unrealistic projections, and then the miscellaneous expenses issue. I didn't mention the sister by name or the family connection, but I did describe the nature of the transfers and the client's evasiveness. David listened, his face growing grimmer with each detail. "Alex, this is highly problematic. Undisclosed. Large transfers like that are a major red flag for fraud or misuse of funds. It suggests a lack of financial control and transparency. We can't approve a loan with this level of uncertainty and potential deceit." "I agree," I said. My recommendation at this point would be to deny the loan unless they can provide full, transparent documentation for every dollar of those miscellaneous expenses, and a much more realistic, verifiable business plan. And even then, given the history of misrepresentation, it's a hard sell, David stated. We have to protect the bank. Good work, Alex. This is why we trust you with these complex cases. His words, usually a source of pride, felt hollow. I had done my job, yes, but the personal ramifications were just beginning. That evening, when Mark came home, I knew I couldn't wait. He walked in, his usual cheerful demeanor, a little subdued, probably still thinking about his parents. "Hey," he said, trying to smile. "How was the meeting with my folks?" "It was enlightening," I replied, my voice devoid of warmth. I gestured for him to sit on the couch. I sat opposite him, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. "Mark, we need to talk about something very serious. Something your parents revealed today." He looked at me, a flicker of apprehension in his eyes. "What is it?" "Beatrice," I said, my gaze steady on his. "Who is Beatrice, Mark? And why have you never, ever mentioned your older sister to me in all our years together?" His face went white. He opened his mouth, then closed it like a fish out of water. "Beatrice, my sister, what are you talking about?" He tried to sound confused, but his eyes betrayed him. They were wide with panic. "Don't lie to me, Mark," I said, my voice rising slightly. "Your mother, Evelyn, told me today. They've been funneling company money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, into miscellaneous expenses to cover her legal troubles, for years. And you never thought to tell me you had a sister. A sister who apparently has major issues that cost your parents a fortune." He finally slumped back against the couch, defeat. "Alex, please. It's complicated. It's a very painful subject for our family. Painful enough to hide from your wife for years." I shot back, the hurt finally breaking through my professional mask. "Painful enough to lie to me about your own family? Mark, I thought we had no secrets. I thought we trusted each other completely. How could you keep something like this from me?" He ran his hands over his face. "Beatrice, she's had a lot of problems. Substance abuse, brushes with the law. It's been a nightmare for my parents. They've tried everything to help her, to keep it quiet, to protect our family's reputation. It was decided years ago that we just wouldn't talk about it. We buried it. I never wanted you to have to deal with that, to be exposed to it. I was trying to protect you, protect me." I scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "By letting me feel like an outsider. By letting your parents constantly imply I wasn't good enough, while you were hiding a secret family member who was actively draining their finances. Do you know what this looks like, Mark? It looks like your parents have been lying on their loan application. It looks like they've been siphoning company money for personal use, disguised as business expenses. That's fraud, Mark. And if I approve this loan, knowing this, I could be held responsible." He looked up at me, his eyes pleading. "No, Alex, please. It's not fraud. They were just trying to help her. It's family money in a way. Their company is practically an extension of them. It's not family money if it's meant for a business loan that needs to be repaid to a bank," I stated coldly. "It's a clear misrepresentation of their financial health. And the fact that you knew about it and didn't tell me, not as your wife, and not as the person who is now evaluating their loan. That's what truly hurts, Mark. That's a betrayal of my trust." The air between us grew heavy, thick with unspoken accusations and years of hidden pain. The loan was no longer just about his parents. It was about our marriage, and whether the foundation we thought we had built was strong enough to withstand the truth. I had unveiled their secrets, but in doing so, I had also unveiled a painful truth about my own relationship, and the decision on the loan, already complicated, now felt like a desperate battle for trust and honesty in my own life. The days following the revelations were unbearable. The silence between Mark and me was deafening, punctuated only by the necessary words about daily life. He tried to apologize, to explain, but the hurt was too deep. I understood his reasoning for protecting his family's secret, but understanding didn't erase the feeling of betrayal. I felt like a fool, kept in the dark, while his family operated with a level of deception that now threatened not just their future, but mine as well. At work, I compiled my final report on the Sterling loan application. My professional assessment was clear. Denis. Their financial projections were unsubstantiated, their collateral was inadequate for the requested amount, and the undisclosed personal expenditures, disguised as business expenses, were a massive red flag. Even if they somehow managed to repay the loan, the lack of transparency and financial control made them an unacceptable risk for the bank. I had all the evidence I needed, meticulously documented, to justify my decision. It was a textbook case for denial. But knowing what to do professionally was one thing, actually doing it was another. The decision was on my desk, waiting for my final signature. I stared at the deny checkbox, my finger hovering over the mouse. I pictured Evelyn's face, her carefully constructed facade of superiority. I remembered her condescending smiles, her dismissive comments about my career, my clothes, my background. Not good enough for our Mark. The words echoed in my mind, a toxic mantra. This was it. This was my chance to deliver, a crushing blow to the people who had tried to crush me for years. Part of me, a small, dark, vengeful part, reveled in the power. I could watch their empire crumble. They would lose everything. And it would be because of the working girl they had so casually dismissed. Then I pictured Mark. His tired eyes, his worried face, caught between his dying family business and his wounded wife. He loved his parents, despite their flaws. He wanted to help them, and he was begging me to find a way. If I denied the loan, I knew it would devastate him. Our marriage, already strained by the revelation of Beatrice, would take a direct hit. Could we survive that level of fallout? Would he ever truly forgive me, even if he understood my professional obligations? I thought about Sarah's words. Are you going to let your personal feelings dictate a professional decision? And then, if their numbers are not sound, if their plan is a house of cards, and you deny them, that's just good business. Their numbers were not sound. Their plan was a house of cards. This was undeniably a bad loan. My integrity as a loan officer, my responsibility to the bank was paramount. Proving it out of misplaced loyalty to Mark, or out of fear of damaging our marriage, would be a betrayal of myself and my profession. It would make me just as dishonest as them, perhaps, trying to manipulate the system for personal reasons. But then I thought of Robert and Evelyn, not as the haughty in-laws, but as desperate people. People who had invested their lives in a business, however poorly managed. People who were now facing financial ruin, homelessness even, as Mark had feared. Did they deserve that? Even with all their terrible behavior? Did I want to be the person who brought that down on them? The power felt immense, terrifying. It was the power to act out of revenge, or to rise above it, to be cold and clinical, or to allow a shred of empathy in, even for those who had shown me none. Suddenly my office door opened and Mark walked in. He looked drawn, his eyes red-rimmed. "Alex," he began, his voice hoarse. "I just spoke to my parents. They're on the edge. They said you asked for more details about the miscellaneous expenses." They know you know about Beatrice. They're terrified. He walked over to my desk, his eyes scanning the documents, landing on the final approval page. He saw the deny checkbox already highlighted. His face crumpled. "Alex, please," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Don't do this. I know they've been awful. I know I screwed up by not telling you. But they're my family. If they lose everything, it will destroy them. It will destroy me. Duh. Just give them a chance. Is there anything at all you can do?" He looked at me, his eyes brimming with tears, more vulnerable than I had ever seen him. His pain was raw, unfiltered. This wasn't manipulation. This was genuine desperation, and it broke my heart. Personal pain I felt from his parents' words was warring with the pain of seeing my husband so utterly distraught. This was the brink. The ultimate test. Do I choose cold, professional judgment, backed by irrefutable facts, and risk shattering my marriage? Or do I find some way, any way to help, potentially compromising my ethics and my job, for the sake of the man I love and the tenuous peace of our family? The weight of the decision was crushing me, pulling me in 100 different directions. My finger still hovered over the mouse, the choice hanging in the air, suspended between anger, love, professional duty, and a profound sense of exhaustion. I looked at Mark, his face etched with pure despair. Truth was, no matter what I decided, someone was going to be hurt. There was no easy way out of this. But Sarah's words echoed in my mind. Your job is to read that story, even if it's unpleasant. The story of Sterling Holdings was unpleasant. It was financially unsound, built on shaky ground and hidden truths. I took a deep breath, and the air felt heavy, like it was pulling my decision into focus. "Mark," I said, my voice quiet but firm, "I cannot approve their loan as is. It would be unethical, professionally irresponsible, and frankly, a betrayal of my oath to the bank. The financial records are misleading, their projections are unrealistic, and the undisclosed expenses for Beatrice's legal troubles, which were deliberately hidden, make them an unacceptable risk." His shoulders slumped. "So, that's it then," he mumbled, his voice full of defeat. "They lose everything." "Not necessarily," I said, catching his eye. This was the part where my professional integrity and my personal empathy had to find a middle ground. "There is a pathway. It's not the one they applied for, and it will be much harder, but it exists." He looked up, a flicker of desperate hope in his eyes. "What is it?" "I can't approve $1 million loan based on fraud and speculation," I explained. "However, if they are willing to secure a smaller asset-backed loan, say a maximum of $200,000, with their personal residence as primary collateral, and if they agree to a strict repayment plan and transparent, regular financial audits, then it's a possibility. It won't save the company in its current form, Mark. It will be a bridge loan, giving them time to sell off non-essential assets, downsize the business significantly, and potentially find new, realistic revenue streams. They would have to be completely honest about Beatrice and her expenses, and work with us on a viable financial plan that doesn't involve hiding information." Mark stared at me, processing this. $200,000. "That's not enough to save the business." "No, it's not," I confirmed. "But it's enough to give them a lifeline to prevent immediate bankruptcy and losing their house. It's a chance for them to pivot or to close down responsibly. Rather than crashing and burning, it gives them options, Mark. If they don't have right now." He covered his face with his hand. "They'll hate it. They'll say it's an insult. They won't want to admit they failed. That's their choice," I said. "My decision is based on professional assessment, not on their pride. They can take this lifeline swallow their pride and try to rebuild, or they can deny reality and lose everything. The choice is theirs. I am not denying them out of revenge. I am denying a bad loan application and offering a responsible alternative given the circumstances. I looked at him, my voice softening. As for you, Mark, and us, I love you. But you kept a huge secret from me. A secret that directly impacted my ability to do my job and put my professional reputation at risk. We need to work through that. This loan is just the symptom of deeper issues within your family and now within our marriage. If we are going to move forward, there has to be complete honesty between us always. No more secrets. No more protecting your family from my knowledge, especially when it involves their finances. He nodded slowly, finally meeting my gaze. His eyes were still sad, but there was a flicker of understanding, maybe even respect. You are right, he said quietly. You are absolutely right. I messed up. I am so sorry, Alex. I really am. He stood up and walked around the desk, pulling me into a tight hug. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for finding a way. And thank you for being honest with me even when it hurts. The next day, I delivered the news to Robert and Evelyn. I was professional, factual, and unwavering. I explained why the full loan was denied, citing the specific financial discrepancies and the lack of transparency. Then, I presented the conditional offer for the smaller, secured loan. Evelyn's face turned from polite smiles to shock, then to outrage. This is preposterous, she shrieked. A mere $200,000 after all our years with this bank. This is an insult. This is because of Mark, isn't it? You are punishing us. Evelyn, I said, my voice steady. My decision is based solely on the financial viability of your current application and the bank's lending criteria. It is a business decision, not a personal one. This smaller loan is the maximum the bank can prudently offer. Given your current financial state and the lack of transparency, it is a chance for you to restructure and stabilize. The alternative is immediate liquidation and potentially losing everything. Robert, surprisingly, was quieter. He looked defeated, perhaps recognizing the truth in my words more than Evelyn did. He took the detailed terms I offered. You are not good enough, Evelyn sneered, her voice venomous, echoing the past. You never were. You'll never be part of this family. I met her gaze, no longer flinching. Actually, Evelyn, I said, a quiet strength in my voice, I am good enough. I am good enough to do my job with integrity, to protect the bank's interests, and to offer a fair, albeit difficult, solution when others would just walk away. And your son chose me, not just despite your opinion, but because I bring honesty and strength into his life. Perhaps that's what your family truly needs. I stood up, signaling the end of the meeting. They left in a huff, Evelyn muttering under her breath, Robert looking shattered. The aftermath was exactly as I predicted. Evelyn and Robert were furious. They initially refused the smaller loan, railing against my betrayal. But, as the days passed and their options dwindled, they swallowed their pride and accepted the conditional. It was a humiliating blow for them, forcing them to confront their financial reality and make difficult changes to their business and lifestyle. My relationship with Mark remained strained for a while, but it slowly began to heal. He saw that I had done my job, that I hadn't acted out of pure malice, and that I had, in fact, given his parents a chance they might not have gotten elsewhere. He apologized again and again for hiding Beatrice, and we began the slow, painful process of rebuilding trust. He started to understand that protecting me didn't mean hiding truths, but trusting me with them. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. The Sterling's company was massively downsized, and their lavish lifestyle was replaced with a more modest one. Family gatherings became even more awkward, though Evelyn's barbs were now tinged with a grudging respect, or perhaps just fear. But I stood taller, feeling a profound sense of peace. I had faced my past, held my ground, and made a difficult decision based on ethics and facts, not just raw emotion. I had proven not to them, but to myself, that I was more than good enough. I was strong, I was capable, and I was finally, truly free of their judgment. The loan was approved, but on my terms, and the victory felt like my own.